stand at the moment of transition. Transition between the observance of Memorial Day here in Israel, Yom HaaZichoron, and the observance of the 60th anniversary of the State of Israel, Yom Haatzmaut. For many, if not most in the audience, it is also a time of transition, because as I look at on this most beautiful of sights, young people from Panama, Australia, and Canada, who just a few days ago walked crestfallen with tear-streaked faces through the grounds of Majdanek and Birkenau and Treblinka and Auschwitz, and now walk through the streets of Israel, of Jerusalem, beaming with light and pride and joy. Another transition. And what do we learn from all of this, and what are we supposed to be thinking at these extraordinary moments? You know, somebody earlier in the program, and I don't mean to criticize, referred to the participants of the 2008 March living as children. No one who walks through Birkenau can be called a child. No one who walks through Treblinka can be called a child. You're adults now. You've grown up. You've seen the worst of what man can do. And it's time for you to take your place amongst, as full-fledged members of the Jewish community and of your countries. You know, as Jews, we like to say that we're one people. No matter where we are in the world, no matter how fiercely loyal we are to our home countries, there's something that binds and connects Jews the world over. One people, Am Echad. But for the last 24 hours or so, as we observed Yom HaZichoron, the day when Israel remembers over 22,000 of its young who gave up their lives in defense of this country so that we can walk its streets without fear, so that we can celebrate with joy and hope and optimism. We also remember as well the great divide between Jews the world over and the Jews of the State of Israel, because the burden is not shared equally. It is only upon the shoulders of the young of the State of Israel that falls the security of the Jewish people in the State of Israel. It is they who serve, it is they who lay their lives on the line. We in diaspora, we are concerned when our children come home late from spending a night in downtown Melbourne or Sydney or Panama City or Montreal and Toronto, Vancouver, Winnipeg. But when the young of Israel go off, the parents have to worry about Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran and Syria. The soldiers of the State of Israel, they are so young and their responsibility is so great. And they are exposed too often, and I say this with regret because it's a moment of celebration, but we need to remember that tonight. Too often exposed to unfair criticism and libel. And as Jews, it's not enough to remember them, we must defend them. It's not enough to memorialize them when they make the ultimate sacrifice. We must defend them when they are alive and serving the Jewish state. Remember something, they are our brothers and our sisters and our sons and our daughters, and we know them better than the BBC or CBC or the media around the world. We know them very well. We know that their hearts are pure and their hands are clean, and they deserve to have us defending them and standing up for them. Remember, we live in a world that suffers from amnesia. We live in a world that within days of 700,000 Palestinians breaking the border from Gaza into Egypt, within days of that, people still talk about an Israeli blockade of Gaza after Egypt reseals a border. In a world like that, where people can restate lie after lie, the voices of truth have to come from us. We have to speak truth. We have to defend them. That's our responsibility. A great transition. To celebrate Israel's 60th, I know some people are concerned because they go to newsstands and pick up magazines that talk about Israel's survival as if it was in question. One thing I can tell you, those articles appeared on the 20th anniversary and the 30th anniversary, the 40th and the 50th, and they'll appear on the 70th and the 160th. They'll always write that article, but we know one thing for sure. Israel is here, and Israel's here to stay, and its observance will be celebrated for all time. Long after of the names of Ahmadinejad and Khania and others are in the wastebasket of history. The names of Menachem Begin and Ben-Gurion will live for all time in the hallowed halls of history. We know one thing for sure as Jews who live in the diaspora. All of our synagogues and all of our study halls and all of our community centers exist for one reason and one reason only, because of the state of Israel. After World War II, we were a broken and shattered people. Only one thing resuscitated us. Only one thing brought us back to life. Only one thing allows us to walk our streets with pride, and that's the state of Israel. We're talking here about the most dramatic reversal of fortune ever told in human history. A people who 60 and 70 years ago were synonymous with refugee, rejected, those whose lives could be taken with impunity. When half the world consumed us and the other half the world stood by, we were a broken people and we have been brought back to life. Brought back to life by the creation of the state of Israel. And one thing that needs to be said over and over again, at every important juncture, in the last 100 years of Jewish history, whether it was the creation of the state, the early settlers, who in defiance of their parents at times, and defiance of their rabbis, yes at times, left their communities and their cities and towns and villages of Eastern and Central Europe and came to this country to make sure we would have a home forever. It was young people who did that, not people my age, it was people your age who did that. And when it came time for the uprising, the Warsaw Ghetto, people like Anilevich and Lubetkin and Zuckerman, they weren't 40 years old, they were your age. It was young people your age who at every important juncture in Jewish history changed the world for all of us. When it came time to remember Soviet Jewry, when 3.5 million Jews were about to be written off, just a few years after the Holocaust, when the Jewish establishment didn't know what to do, they were paralyzed by doubt. It was young people ashamed of the silence of their parents and grandparents during World War II who said, never again will we find a silent Jew when other Jews are suffering. Never again will a Jew be passive when other Jews are being threatened. It was young people your age who rose up and said, no, no more, free Soviet Jewry, and 1 million of them are here in Israel today. It was young people your age who determined history for all of us. And it's going to be young people in this generation who will determine the future for the rest of us. Every generation has different challenges. Every generation has different obligation. But the torch has now been passed to a new generation, to you, to lead the fight for democracy and the survival of Israel and the defense of Israel, to defend this state, to defend Jewish identity, to defend the rights of all. We stand here in awe of the accomplishments of the citizens of the state, a state that has taken in, just in the past few months, 2,000 refugees from Darfur. They have found comfort and solace here, nowhere else. In the great tradition of Menachem Begin, who brought in the Vietnamese boat people, Israel stands for justice. Israel stands for human rights. If there was justice in the world, every country would be celebrating this anniversary of the state of Israel, because Israel has taught the world how a country can defend human rights as fiercely as it defends its own freedom, as fiercely as it defends its own survival. No country comes close. How a country bereft of natural resources become a center of high tech and medical research. How a country can take in immigrants from scores of countries, 100 different countries, and have them live together in harmony. Countries that are now trying to figure out and navigate how to deal with immigrants should come to Israel and learn. This is a beacon to the entire world. And if we lived in a world of truth and justice, the whole world would be celebrating this anniversary. But we're celebrating. And we're going to make the case for Israel. On this 60th and on the 70th and on the 100th. You're going to tell your children and grandchildren that you were here on the 60th. And you're going to bring them here on the 100th anniversary. You're going to show them this country. Maybe some of you will be living here by then. Maybe some of you will take off time to study here. And maybe you will understand profoundly in the depths of your spirit how the story of this state is your story. How the streets of Jerusalem are your streets. How this most magnificent story, the most magnificent reversal of fortune history is your own story. Be inspired by it. Live by it. Make it a part of your lives. And you know one thing for sure, after walking where we walked last week and after walking where we walk today, you know without question that Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live. And those three simple words are the clarion call of everyone who's ever gone on the March of the Living. Am Yisrael Chai, the Jewish people live and live forever.